SLT Mobitel, the connection. SLT Mobitel, the connection.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, the backup. The Department of Justice charges 3 Easter attack suspects in a US court. Getting closer and closer, the president personally writes to Indian and Chinese leaders to secure COVID vaccine, while the Advisory Committee on Communicable Diseases to hold vaccine talks next week.
The Advisory Committee on Communicable Diseases will sit this week and will decide on what vaccine will be most appropriate to our country.
Facing a mountain of allegations, the quartet of former ETI finance directors remanded until the 12th. A hindrance to peace. Mullivaikal monument has no place in present day or the future, says the authorities. All that and much more coming up on First at 9, this Saturday the 9th of January 2021.
ඇල්කොහොල් අඩංගු hand sanitizer භාවිත කරන්න. ලෙඩ රෝග ඇති කරන විෂ බීජවලට එරෙහිව සටන් කරන්න. හඳුන්වා දීමේ මිල රුපියල් 350යි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammik Ekanaik. Now, the US Justice Department has announced that 3 Sri Lankans are charged with terrorism offences, including conspiring to provide material support to the so-called ISIS. The trio are currently in Sri Lankan custody over the Easter Sunday terror attacks of 2019. US Justice Department says that the men in question were part of a group of ISIS supporters which called itself ISIS in Sri Lanka. The bombings killed over 260 people, including 5 US citizens.
A communique from the US Department of Justice says that the 3 defendants were committed supporters of ISIS, recruited others to ISIS's violent cause, purchased materials for and made improvised explosive devices, helped to prepare and trained others who participated in the attacks, and murdered in the name of the deadly foreign terrorist organization. It acknowledges that the suspects are in custody in Sri Lanka and says that these charges reflect that the US justice system remains a powerful tool to bring to bear against those who harm US citizens abroad. US Attorney for the Central District of California Nick Hanna is quoted saying that the United States remains confident in the Sri Lankan authorities' ability to bring the perpetrators to justice, and this complaint makes clear that we stand ready with these charges in the event the defendants attempt to evade justice, unquote. The communique says that the criminal case filed on the 11th of December in 2020 in the US District Court in Los Angeles is the result of a nearly 2-year investigation by the FBI, which assisted Sri Lankan authorities in the wake of the suicide bombings that targeted Christian churches and luxury hotels frequented by Westerners. The 3 defendants named in the criminal complaint are Mohammad Naufar, Mohammad Anwar Mohammad Rizkan and Ahmad Milhan Hayatu Mohammad, and the document says that all 3 have pledged allegiance to ISIS. Mohammad Naufar, it says, is the second emir for the group of ISIS supporters that called itself ISIS in Sri Lanka and is the individual who allegedly led the group's propaganda efforts, recruited others to join ISIS and led a series of multi-day military-type trainings. Mohammad Anwar Mohammad Rizkan is alleged to have helped manufacture the IEDs used in the Easter attacks. Ahmad Milhan Hayatu Mohammad meanwhile allegedly executed a police officer in order to obtain the officer's firearm, shot a suspected informant, and scouted a location for a separate terrorist attack. All 3 defendants are charged with conspiring to providing and attempting to provide material support to a designated foreign terrorist organization. Additionally, Naufar and Milhan are charged with aiding and abetting the receipt of military-type training from ISIS.
Now, health authorities will be sitting for talks next week to hammer out what COVID vaccine would be better suited for Sri Lanka and to decide on the methodology on its application. Chief Epidemiologist of the Epidemiology Unit, Dr. Sudat Samaravira, confirmed this today, while also adding a word of caution for the people. He said that although the country's daily caseload is on the wane, it is no reason to drop the guard.
Businesses are open, airports are on the verge of being completely opened, and life goes on, with face masks and hand sanitizers proving to be two big sellers. The country has well and truly adjusted to the new normal. Another feature of this new normal is a report of daily COVID-19 case numbers and deaths. In that front, 535 coronavirus infections have been confirmed in Sri Lanka so far today. Meanwhile, yesterday, the number was 525, with the infections being reported across 20 districts. As it has been the case for some time, the Colombo district accounted for the bulk of it, 193 cases from yesterday's infections. 94 cases were reported from Gampa, 56 from Vaunia, 29 from Kaluthara, 25 from Kandy, 22 from Galle, 15 each from Kegol and Polonnaruwa, and 12 infections were reported from the Kurunegala district. Out of the remaining 64 infections, 63 were identified from 11 other districts, while the remaining case involved a Sri Lankan expatriate.
Now we can see a very slight reduction of cases reporting daily, but still we are reporting that several hundred of cases every day. Yesterday itself, reports of 17,217 PCR tests has been issued from all the laboratories, including government and private sector in the country. So with this number of tests only that we can experience that reducing number of cases. This is a positive indicator that we are in a certain control of the disease, but it is too early to be complacent with that. But there is some indication that if we insist on our control measures throughout, we will be able to control this disease in coming days.
In the meantime, the country's death toll rose by 3 yesterday to 225. They were aged 72, 75 and 87. The 72-year-old had died due to COVID pneumonia, while the 75-year-old had died due to a stroke that was brought on by septicemia and COVID pneumonia. The cause of death of the remaining victim was stated as lung infection and heart disease brought on by COVID-19. Though the world is adopting health and safety measures to limit the spread of the virus, the collective hope of the world is pinned on finding a vaccine for the virus. As things stand, a total of 6 COVID-19 vaccines have received emergency use authorization, with the vaccines developed by Moderna and Pfizer-BioNTech said to have an efficacy of 95%. With these developments taking place, Chief Epidemiologist at the Epidemiology Unit, Dr. Sudat Samaravira, says that a decision with regard to what vaccine the country will opt for and the logistics involved in it will be discussed in the upcoming week.
We expect that we will be also receiving vaccine very soon. Within the first quarter of the year, we hope that Sri Lanka will get some quota of vaccine free of charge, and the Advisory Committee on Communicable Diseases will sit this week and will decide on what vaccine will be most appropriate to our country and how to administer that, and also who are the priority population groups to get this vaccine. Among the priority groups that we have already identified, the healthcare workers as well as the frontline workers, especially working with COVID-19 prevention work, and also the people aged 60 or above, and people even below 60 if they are suffering from chronic diseases, and also people working at very crucial points like harbour, airports, then power generation sites are identified as priority groups that need to be vaccinated as early as possible.
In the meantime, with the government looking to resume work at full capacity at both private and public institutions similar to what existed during the pre-pandemic times, Dr. Samaravira urges people to continue to adhere to the health and safety guidelines.
Since the beginning of October last year, the work in offices and other places, especially in the government sector, has restricted very much to prevent spread of COVID-19. In most instances, the staff calling for work was halved, but now we can't go on like this. We have to function all the institutions, all the offices and factories, everything in full capacity. The need will be coming very soon. So with that, all the people has the responsibility to act in a way that prevent COVID-19 spreading in the society.
In another development, police media spokesperson DIG Ajit Rohana says that the crackdown on persons who aren't wearing face masks will continue throughout the western province.
බස්නාහිර පලාතේ මුහුණුවාවරණ නොපරිදින පුද්ගලයින් සම්බන්ධ සිදු කරනු ලබන මෙහෙයුම පසුගිය 5 වෙනි අඟහරුවාදා ආරම්භ වුණා. ඊයේ 4 වෙනි දිනයටත් ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනු ලැබුවා. මේ මෙහෙයුමට අදාළව පුද්ගලයින් 2025 දෙනෙක් පමණ මුහුණුවාවරණ නොපරිදීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් අත්අඩංගුවටගෙන අවශ්‍ය ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගෙන තිබෙනවා. මේ 2025 දෙනාගෙන් 1077 දෙනෙක් රැපිඩ් ඇන්ටිජන් පරීක්ෂණ සඳහා යොමු කර තිබෙනවා. එම රැපිඩ් ඇන්ටිජන් පරීක්ෂණ වලින් 19 දෙනෙක් කොවිඩ් ආසාදිතයින් බවට හඳුනාගෙන තිබෙනවා. ඒ වගේම ඉතිරි 948 දෙනෙක් පමණ PCR පරීක්ෂණ සඳහා යොමු කර තිබෙනවා. මෙම PCR පරීක්ෂණ වලින් 200කගේ පමණ ප්‍රතිඵල ලැබී තිබෙනවා. එයින් 5 දෙනෙක් කොවිඩ් ආසාදිතයින් බවට හඳුනාගෙන තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම 300කට ආසන්න පිරිසක් ඔවුන්ගේ සමීප ආශ්‍රිතයින් හැටියට හඳුනාගෙන තියෙනවා. ඒ අයට ප්‍රතිකාර ලබා දීමටත් ඒ වගේම සමීප ආශ්‍රිතයින් නිරෝධායනයට ලක් කිරීමටත් සෞඛ්‍ය අංශ කටයුතු කර තිබෙනවා.
In the meantime, head of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19, Army Commander General Shavendra Silva, announced today that a few more areas would go into lockdown until further notice. As such, the Mummana Grama Niladhari Division in Pannala and the Vattava Grama Niladhari Division belonging to the Giriula police area will be isolated. In addition, selected areas in Koskota belonging to the Pujapitiya police area in Kandy will also be under lockdown until further notice. Now, the Foreign Ministry insists that the repatriation process amid the pandemic is people-centric and transparent. Foreign Secretary Admiral Professor Jayanath Kolambage has said that the ministry will continue facilitating repatriations without any financial burden on Sri Lankans. A statement from the ministry says that the Foreign Secretary made it clear that the role of the missions is strictly confined to organising repatriation flights for returnees who are tested on arrival, offered all logistical support and are quarantined at government facilities free of charge. A statement from the Foreign Ministry read that Sri Lankan returnees are drawn from the list of overseas Sri Lankans registered in the missions and posts and repatriated depending on their vulnerability levels and on a first-come, first-served basis. Further, the Foreign Employment Bureau and their representatives are working with Sri Lankan missions on the safe return of the expatriate working community on the same basis in relation to availability of flights and clearance by airport authorities in the relevant countries. The number of passengers who are permitted to travel per day, however, is determined by the task force, chiefly based on a periodical appraisal and inputs provided by the Army in charge of quarantine centres and the Ministry of Health, which is entrusted with the task of implementing health guidelines. In circumstances where the local quarantine and medical care facilities are fully stretched, repatriation on payment basis becomes an option for those returnees who could afford such facilities. It goes on to say that charter flights for overseas Sri Lankans are approved and organised through Sri Lanka missions on the request of Sri Lankan community groups who prefer paid quarantine, testing and other logistical arrangements involved in the repatriation process. Cargo flights and a few selected commercial flights are also approved by the Ministry for repatriation, a third type of facilitation offered to relatively small groups of passengers who could afford to pay for quarantine and other requirements involved, and a maximum of 75 passengers per flight are permitted as per the latest directive of the COVID task force. The Foreign Ministry says that the general sales agents of respective airlines have been authorised to deal with the passengers on charges of air tickets, PCR tests and quarantining, and the diplomatic missions have not been mandated to handle payments whatsoever concerning the travel requirements, except for extremely special cases of requests for such facilitation. It notes that as the pandemic situation remains fluid and unpredictable, a regular reappraisal is undertaken, based on which the process of repatriation is periodically reviewed. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa meanwhile assures that the country is in talks with India, China and the World Health Organization to secure consignments of COVID-19 vaccines. The head of state said that he personally wrote to the leaders of India and China in this regard.
The fifth phase of the program, where the head of state has dialogue with the rural community, titled Gama Samagapili Sandarak, was worked off today under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the Lahugala Primary School in the Uhana Divisional Secretariat Division in Ampara. The program was worked off in compliance with COVID-19 health and safety measures. It was also attended by public representatives and government officials in the area.
රජයේ හැටියට අපේ ප්‍රතිපත්තියේ මූලික දෙයක් තමයි කෘෂිකර්මාන්තය දියුණු කරන්න. මේ සංවර්ධනය ස්ථිරසාර සංවර්ධනයක් බවට පෙරලන්න තමයි මේ ගමින් ගමට ගිහිල්ලා නිලධාරීනුත් ගෙනහිල්ලා පහසුකම් ග්‍රාමීය ජනතාවට ලබා දෙන්න ක්‍රියා කරන්න. මේ කොවිඩ් වසංගතය නිසා අපි දන්නවා අද අපි හැමෝම මේ මාස්ක් එකක් දාගෙන මේ වගේ රැස්වීම් පවා පවත්වන්නට විශාල අභියෝගයක් වෙලා තිබෙනවා. එන්නත් මේ වෙනකොටත් ඒ ඉන්දියාව ඒ වගේම ලෝක සෞඛ්‍ය සංවිධානය චීනය රුසියාව වගේ රටවල් සමග මේක ඉක්මනින්ම අපිටත් ලබා ගන්නට කටයුතු කරගෙන යනවා. මම ඉන්දියාවේ අගමැතිතුමාට පුද්ගලිකවම ලිපියක් ලිව්වා. චීනයේ ජනාධිපතිතුමාට පුද්ගලිකවම ලිපියක් ලිව්වා. ඉක්මනින්ම ඒගොල්ලෝ සූදානම් වෙච්ච විගසම අපිට මේ එන්නත ලබා දෙන්නට කියලා ලෝක සෞඛ්‍ය සංවිධානයනොත් ඉන්දියාවෙනුත් චීනෙනුත් යම් කොටසක් අපිට නොමිලේ ලබා දෙයි. ඉතුරු කොටස අපි මිලදී ගන්නවා. විශාල ජයග්‍රහණයක් අපිට ලබා දුන්නේ අර තිබිනු ක්‍රමවේදය වෙනස් කළා ජනතාවගේ අවශ්‍යතාවයන් බලාගෙන ක්‍රියා කරන රජයක් රටක් ඇති කරන්න. දේශපාලන ක්‍රමේ පවා වෙනස් කරන්න. ඒ හින්දා තමයි මම ඔය බලයට පත් වුණාට පස්සේ ගිය පාර වගේ දේශපාලන පරිගැනීම් ඒක නීතියෙන් වැරදි වැඩ කරා නම් ඒක නීතියෙන් ඒගොල්ලෝ කරගෙන යයි. නමුත් අනවශ්‍ය ලෙස බලපෑම් කළා දේශපාලනය මුල් කරගෙන වැඩ කරන්න මං සූදානම් නැහැ. හැබැයි ඉතින් එහෙම කරනකොටත් අවාසනාවකට වගේ දැන් විරුද්ධ පක්ෂයත් හඳුරන්නේ ඒක තේරුම් අරගෙන නැහැ. පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ දැක්කනේ පහුගිය දවස්වල අර හරීන්ද්‍ර කවුද හරීන් ෆඩෑන් කියලා മന്ത്രിවරයෙක් කතා කරපු විලාසය ඒක නෙමෙයි අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. ඉතින් නන්දසේන කියලා මම නන්දසේන ගෝඨාභය හොඳ නම් ඒවා. හැබැයි ඉතින් නන්දසේන ගෝඨාභයගේ චරිත දෙකක් තියෙනවා. දැන් තාමත් සමහර වෙලාවට හාමුදුරුවෝ මට කියනවා අපිට ඕන ජනාධිපති ගෝඨාභය නෙමෙයි අර ආරක්ෂක ලේකම් ගෝඨාභය තමයි ඕන. ටිකක් සැරෙන් ඉන්න ඕන කියලා. ඒකත් කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඉතින් ඒ જાතියෙන් එනවනම් මට ඒ જાතියෙන් කරන්නත් පුළුවන්. ඉතින් ඕන දෙයකට සූදානම් පුළුවන් චරිතයක්. දේශපාලනය කරන්න පුළුවන් විපක්ෂයත් දේශපාලනය කරන්න ඕන. හැබැයි මේ ජනතාව බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන සාධාරණ දේශපාලනය ඕන කරන්න.
The people present then put forth their grievances to the president.
සින්නකර ඔප්පු තිබෙනවා. ඉතින් මේවා වනජීවි දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවේ මේ පහවුණු අවුරුදු දෙක තුනකදී එක බින් ඇඟලක් වගා කරන්න දෙන්න බෑ තහනම්. එක ගොවියෙකුට පහර දුන්නා අතිගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමනි. පහර දීපු එකනත් අද ඉන්නවා මෙතන. ඒ වගේම වන රක්ෂණ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවේ ගොවි බින් සොය මෙහෙම මායින් දාලා තියෙන්නේ. පැත්තකට යන්න එපා කියනවා එක ගොවියෙකුට නඩුත් දැම්මා.
නිලධාරීන්ට අපි පැහැදිලිවම ප්‍රතිපත්තියක් වශයෙන් අපි කිව්වා මේ ඉඩම් වගා කරපු අයට නිදහස් කරන්න කියලා. ඉතින් ඔය අය කිසිම බියක් නැතුව ඒවා වගා කරන්න.
අපි 2014 ගණිත විද්‍යා ගුරු සහායකවරු ලෙස පත්වීම් ලැබුවා. දැනට අවුරුදු 6ක් අකණ්ඩව සේවය කරනවා දුෂ්කර පාසල්වල. එතකොට අපි දැනට රුපියල් 10000ක දීමනාවක් විතරයි ලබන්නේ. අපි 2017 අධ්‍යාපනවේදී උපාධිය හදාරන්න පටන් ගත්තත් අපි මේ වෙනකොට ලියලා තියෙන්නේ එක විභාගයක් විතරයි. එතකොට නැවත අපට ලියුමක් එවනවා ගිය අවුරුද්දේ ඔබලා මේ සේවයෙන් පහ කරන්න සූදානම් වෙනවයි කියලා
තරුණ ගුරුතුමා කියන කතාව ඇත්ත. මම අධ්‍යාපන වැඩිදුරින් කාලේ තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ බඳවගන්නේ.
දීමනාව 20000ක් කරන්න අපි තීරණය කරමු.
සුදුසුකම් වෙනස් කරන්න බෑ. ඒකට මුළු ලංකාවටම බලපානවනේ. දීමනාව වැඩි කරන්න. ඊට පස්සේ ඔයගොල්ලෝ සුදුසුකම ලබා ගන්න ඉක්මනින්ම.
අපි අවුරුදු 4ක් දීලා තිබුණේ මේගොල්ලන්ට උපාධිය ලබා ගන්න. ඒක නොහැකි වුණා. අපිට තව අවුරුදු 2ක කාලයක් දීර්ඝ කරලා දෙන්න පුළුවන්.
The 4 former directors of the ETI Finance who were arrested once more yesterday were remanded until the 12th. The quartet is accused of misappropriation, money laundering and unauthorized acceptance of deposits amounting to 13.7 billion rupees.
The former board of directors of Swarna Mahal Financial Services and ETI Finance Limited were arrested on Tuesday over charges of unauthorized acceptance of deposits worth 13.7 billion rupees, misappropriation and money laundering. They were later released on bail. On the instructions of the Attorney General, the former directors of ETI Finance Limited, Jeevaka Edirisinghe, Anjali Deepa Edirisinghe, Asanka Edirisinghe and Nalaka Edirisinghe, however, were arrested again and remanded by the CID yesterday. Today they were produced before the Halfstaff Magistrates Court. Appearing for the complainant, Senior Deputy Solicitor General Haripriya Jayasundara told the court that the report of the Presidential Commission to investigate the financial irregularities revealed that the directors of those institutions had committed offences such as fraud, criminal misappropriation, criminal breach of trust and money laundering under the Penal Code. Also, the Senior Deputy Solicitor General stated in court that ETI Finance Limited had been generating black money from the depositors' money even before 2011 by maintaining undisclosed accounts, circumventing central bank regulation. The additional magistrate inquired as to why the central bank had not barred the institution from accepting deposits at that time. Responding to the question, the Senior Deputy Solicitor General said that due to a large number of depositors having already deposited money in these institutions and due to not being able to take responsibility for all those depositors, the central bank had instructed to maintain these institutions according to a restructured plan under central bank regulation. The Senior Deputy Solicitor General added that even after those instructions, these institutions had subtly violated the central bank's restrictions on accepting deposits and had continued to accept deposits, committing massive fraud. After considering submissions of all the parties, the additional magistrate remanded former ETI directors Jeevaka Edirisinghe, Nalaka Edirisinghe, Anjali Deepa Edirisinghe and Asanka Edirisinghe until the 12th of January.
Now, there were tense scenes at the Jaffna University last night and even today following the removal of what is known as the Mullivaikkal monument from the university premises. The monument is allegedly erected to commemorate the Tamil people who died during the war. Though there were protests following the removal of the monument, the chairman of the University Grants Commission said that it was removed by the university's vice-chancellor as it could prove to be a hindrance to the peace between the communities in the north and the south.
The structure built within the Jaffna University by the students in 2018 is identified as a Mullivaikkal monument, which they say commemorates the Tamil people who died during the war. The university authorities, however, removed the memorial last night. Police said there were an unrest following the removal of the monument involving university students, locals and some political representatives. The police special task force was also deployed in addition to the Kopai police. Some groups continue to protest the move today as well. Kopai police meanwhile arrested 2 university students during the protest for entering the university premises without permission and violent behaviour. The duo was produced before the Jaffna Magistrates Court and they were released upon 2 sureties of 50,000 rupees. In the meantime, 5 students of the Jaffna University have launched a fast unto death in protest of the monument's removal, calling for permission for the monument to be rebuilt.
ඒකේ හමුදාවේ කිසිම සම්බන්ධයක් නැහැ පොලිසිය කිසිම සම්බන්ධයක් නැහැ ඒකට විරුද්ධව තමයි උද්ඝෝෂණ තියෙන්නේ උද්ඝෝෂණය පාලනය කරන්න ඔවුන්ව විසිරවන්න තමයි හමුදාව සහ පොලිසිය පාවිච්චි කරලා තියෙන්නේ ඒකට කිසිම අපේ සම්බන්ධයක් නැහැ.
Meanwhile, Chairman of the University Grants Commission, Senior Professor Sampath Amaratunga, said that the monument in question could prove to be a hindrance to the peace between the North and the South. He says that the monument had been removed in line with the decision taken by the Vice-Chancellor of the Jaffna University, Professor S. Sri Satkunaraja, since the monument does not suit the present and the future.
Moving on with other local stories, all inmates who are incarcerated over failure to pay fines will be released under a special presidential pardon. The discussion had taken place, or more like the decision has been taken with intention of easing the congestion at prisons across the island owing to the COVID-19 outbreak. These inmates will be released starting from today after referring them for PCR tests and confirming that they are negative for the novel coronavirus. Public health inspectors and relevant police OICs will also be informed in this regard. Now, approximately 30 people have sustained injuries after a bus toppled into a canal that feeds the tank Parakrama Samudra in Pulastipura off Polonnaruwa. The bus transporting employees of an apparel factory had veered off-road and fallen into a canal as the bus driver lost control of the vehicle. According to reports, the incident had happened this morning. The injured passengers are currently under medical care at hospitals in Polonnaruwa and Pulastipura. Pulastipura police are conducting further investigations into the incident. We will see you shortly. Bear with us. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, oil prices hit their highest level in nearly a year yesterday, gaining 8% on the week, supported by Saudi Arabia's pledge to cut output and strong gains in major equity markets. The Brent crude settled at $55.99 a barrel, climbing $1.61 on the day and 8.1% on the week. US West Texas Intermediate crude futures closed at $52.24 a barrel, gaining $1.41 with a weekly gain of 7.7%. Saudi Arabia this week pledged extra voluntary oil output cuts of 1 million barrels per day in February and March as part of a deal under which most OPEC Plus producers will hold production steady during new lockdowns. According to energy services firm Baker Hughes, the number of U.S. oil rigs rose for the 7th straight week, gaining 8 to 275 this week, to its highest since May. A global equities rally, meanwhile, pushed Japan's Nikkei and U.S. stock benchmarks to new records yesterday, while safe havens such as treasuries and gold sold off as investors looked past political unrest in the United States and focused on further stimulus plans to mend the economic damage of the coronavirus pandemic. MSCI's gauge of stocks across the globe rose 0.77% following broad gains in Asia and Europe, pushing it to new records. Nikkei added 2.36%, hitting its highest level since August 1990. In morning trading on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.26% to 31,120.98, whereas the S&P 500 gained 0.44% to 3,820.35. The Nasdaq Composite added 0.65% to 13,151.86. The surge came despite data released by the Labor Department that showed the U.S. economy shed 140,000 jobs in December, the first time that payroll decreased in 8 months. Yet investors expect that President-elect Joe Biden's incoming administration will pass bigger fiscal stimulus and infrastructure spending plans. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.